Story 1. I let the heavy bag slip from my hand, and it hits the ground with a soft thud, more felt than heard. The night air is still, cold enough to sting the inside of my nose when I breathe in. I don't move right away. I stand there like a statue listening, not just for footsteps or snapped branches, but for the small changes that don't have a sound. The way the woods seem to lean in, the way silence can feel crowded. I close my eyes for a second and reach for that gut sense I've learned to trust, the kind that warns you when something is nearby, even if your ears can't pick it up. Nothing comes, or at least nothing comes that I can name. I open my eyes, crouch, and gather my things again. The trail ahead is narrow and dark, a thin path cut into thicker darkness. I start walking, careful not to rush. In these woods, hurrying is the same as bleeding. I used to think I was the scariest thing out here. That might sound like a joke to normal people, but it was a real belief I carried for a long time. I did terrible things. I got away with them. I learned how to keep my face calm, how to smile at the right time, how to act like an ordinary person while my mind stayed 2 steps ahead of anyone who might catch on. I believed the worst monster in these trees was me, because I came here by choice and I knew exactly what I was doing. I was wrong. Not slightly wrong. Not maybe I misjudged wrong. I was catastrophically wrong, the kind of wrong that ruins you completely once you finally understand it. If I could go back, I would. I would give almost anything to return to the first moment and choose a different road. Choose not to start this. Choose not to place that first offering in the clearing like I was tossing scraps to a wild animal. But time doesn't care about regret, and the woods don't forgive. There's no undo button. There's only the next step, and the one after that, and the point where you finally reach the consequences you've been walking toward without admitting it. I've been playing a dangerous game for too long, thinking I'm smart, thinking I'm careful. People love that saying about mess around and find out. I've done plenty of messing around, and now the finding out is rushing at me like a truck with no headlights. 'Cause what I'm doing is not stable. It never was. It only felt stable because it worked, until it didn't. Deals like this always change. Whatever you bargain with always wants more. That's how it stays in control. At the beginning, it felt like a miracle. I had a problem that couldn't be solved the normal way. A problem made of bone and blood and things you can't throw in a dumpster without someone asking questions. I needed a place where evidence could disappear. A place where it would be taken care of without leaving a trace behind. When I found this trail and this clearing, it felt like the universe had handed me the answer. A dark answer, but still an answer. My mother used to say that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. She said it in that plain, simple way that mothers do, like it's common sense and you'd be a fool not to listen. I heard her, but I didn't listen. I thought I was too clever for warnings like that. I thought I could control anything as long as I understood the rules. The truth is, I never understood the rules. Not really. I keep walking, setting my feet down with care, making sure my steps are confident. I've learned not to show fear here. Fear isn't just an emotion in this place. It's a signal. It leaks off you. It stains the air. And the forest seems to notice. Whether it's the creature itself or the woods around it, I can't say, but I know this much. Panic makes you easier to find. Up ahead, the trail bends slightly, and I see the old tree stump that always marks a certain point in my trip. It's wizened and twisted, like a knuckle pushing up out of the earth. I've passed it so many times that it should feel normal, but tonight it catches my attention in a way it hasn't before. I slow down and stare. There's a crack running through it, black and jagged like the wood was split by force. I don't remember that being there. The split looks fresh compared to the rest of the stump, darker, sharper. For a moment, I try to convince myself it's always looked like that, and I just never noticed. Maybe lightning hit it. That would make sense. Storms roll through this area sometimes. Still, the sight of it makes my stomach tighten, like my body is reacting before my mind has a chance to make excuses. I glare at the stump as I walk past, almost like I expect it to do something. The farther I go, the worse my sense of dread becomes. The end of the trail is close now. My destination is close. The bag feels heavier with every step, dragging down my arm and shoulder. I let it hang lower until it starts to scrape along the ground. The moss under it is thick and damp, soft enough that the rough material doesn't make much sound. The forest swallows noise the way it swallows everything else. Soon the trees open up and the clearing appears, washed in thin moonlight. The sky above is clear enough for the moon to paint the grass pale and silver, but it doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like a stage, like the light exists to make sure whatever happens here can be seen. I walk into the center, drop the bag, and step back quickly toward the tree line. I don't like standing exposed. Out in the open, you can't pretend you have any power. You can only wait. Something feels off tonight. That thought runs through my mind again and again. I can't explain it, but it's there, like a splinter under the skin. I've survived this long because I don't ignore feelings like that. In my line of work, if you can even call it that, you learn that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it just sits in your gut and refuses to leave. Even though I've tried to act calm, a chill crawls over my skin. I hear it in the distance now, moving through the brush. It isn't quiet. Whatever it is, it doesn't care about being heard. It pushes through the undergrowth like a heavy animal, snapping branches, tearing through ferns and dry leaves. The noise is getting closer. I roll my shoulders back, trying to loosen the tension, and shake my head slightly like I can throw off the fear. I've done this so many times. I've stood here and waited while it came. I've watched it feed. I've left afterward and told myself the problem was handled. But tonight, the sound of it makes my throat go dry. It's closer now. I can hear the noises it makes clearly. Wet, thick snarls like something choking on its own saliva. The sound is disgusting, and it sends a shiver through me that I can't control. I try to swallow down the panic rising in my chest, but it pushes back harder than usual. I can't tell if the fear is just me finally realizing how insane this is, or if the creature gives off something, some kind of signal, that makes my body respond the way prey responds to a predator. I force myself to stand straight anyway. My heart is hammering, but I keep my posture steady. I keep my hands at my sides. I don't run. It enters the clearing. Even after all this time, the sight of it never looks real. It's a mass of darkness and movement, a shape that doesn't hold still long enough for the mind to name it. It's large, but not in a normal way. It has weight, But it also looks like it could melt into the shadows if it wanted to. It shifts and pulls itself forward, and then something like a claw stretches out, thin, sinewy, black like ink poured into the air. The claw hooks the bag and rips it open. The contents spill out onto the grass. I don't let myself look at them directly. I already know what's in there. I know the color. I know the smell. I know the sticky, awful reality of it. The creature snarls again, and then its body lowers and blocks my view as it begins to feed. The sounds start immediately. Wet crunches, tearing, the horrible rhythm of something consuming what it shouldn't be consuming. I stare at one patch of thick, matted fur on its back and focus on that like it's the only thing in the world. If I keep my eyes steady, if I keep my mind steady, I can get through this part. Still, the sounds seep into me. They crawl under my skin. I can't fully tune them out. My jaw tightens until it aches. After what feels like forever, the sounds slow, then stop. Almost done, I tell myself. This is how it always ends. I bring the offering, it eats, and I leave. There's still work to do after this. Cleaning up, wiping down tools, destroying a phone, making sure nothing can be traced back to me, deleting any camera footage that might have caught the wrong moment. All of that is stressful, sure, but it's human stress. It's familiar. Compared to standing in this clearing while an impossible thing feeds, the rest of my night is simple. I'm already thinking ahead, already planning my drive home. When the creature moves again, it rises. At first I think it's just shifting, getting comfortable. But then it keeps going, lifting itself higher and higher, unfolding like something waking up. It reaches a height that makes my breath catch. It was always big, always monstrous, but now it looks different. The shape of it is changing in a way I can't ignore. It seems straighter, more balanced, less like an animal on all fours, more like a figure trying to stand the way I stand. A cold wave rolls through me. I step backward without thinking, pressing closer to the trees. The move is instinctive, like I'm trying to hide behind trunks and branches. The idea is ridiculous. This is its place. If it wanted me, the trees wouldn't matter at all. I still see no eyes. I've never seen eyes. But I feel its attention like a hand on the back of my neck, guiding my every breath. My lungs start working too fast. My breath turns shaky and shallow. Then it speaks. You will bring more. The words come out in a voice so low I feel it more than I hear it. It vibrates through the clearing, through the ground, through my bones. For a second I can't move. I can't even think properly. My mind stumbles over the fact that it just spoke like a person. It can talk. The way it speaks is slow and rough, like it's dragging the words out of a place that isn't meant to form them. Like it's learning, like it's practicing. That should not be possible. That should not be happening. But it is happening. I'm not brave. I'm not stupid enough to argue with it. I nod weakly, hoping that's enough, hoping it's satisfied. It stays still for a moment, as if watching me closely, judging whether I understood. Then it turns and moves away across the clearing. The grass where the offering was is empty now, except for the dark stain soaked into the ground. I stand there stunned and watch it disappear into the trees. My legs feel numb, like they don't fully belong to me. A terrible thought begins to form, and once it does, I can't stop it. When I first came across this creature, It wasn't like this. Back then, I was looking for a place to dump some extra meat. That's what I called it in my head because using the real words made it harder to breathe. I found the clearing, I left the bag, and the creature came like a starving animal. It didn't hesitate. It didn't pause. It didn't stand up and look at me like it had a mind. It was pure hunger, pure instinct. A twisted thing, yes, but still something animal-like. If I'd had to compare it to anything, I would have said it was bear-like, only wrong in shape, wrong in movement, wrong in the way it seemed to melt and reform as it fed. Now it speaks. Now it stands taller. Now it makes demands. As my mind races, the truth clicks into place so suddenly it makes me feel sick. Bile rises in the back of my throat. It's changing because of what I've been feeding it. It's taking on human traits because I've been giving it humans. The thought hits me with a weight that nearly knocks me over. I turn and start back down the trail, moving fast, no longer caring about how much noise I make. Sweat beads along the back of my neck, cold against my skin. My hands feel clammy. My stomach twists. What am I going to do? This whole arrangement worked because it stayed simple. I brought the parts I needed gone, and the forest took them. No evidence, no questions, no cleanup beyond my usual precautions. But now it wants more. It's not just accepting what I give it, it's ordering me. And if it keeps improving, if it keeps learning how to look like us and sound like us, then what? What happens when it no longer needs me to bring food? What happens when it decides it can get its own? I push through the trees until the trail finally opens up to the dirt road. My car is parked where I left it, a dark shape against the lighter patch of open sky. Relief should hit me, but it doesn't. Not fully. I keep glancing back, unable to stop myself. When I reach the car, I turn for one last look at the forest. Something moves at the tree line. The creature is there. It followed me. I didn't hear it. Not once. On the walk back, I heard nothing trailing behind me, no heavy crashing, no snapping branches. I had assumed it stayed in the clearing like it always did. But it didn't. It came after me quietly, like a hunter. The realization makes my blood run cold. I stand there staring, and even though it has no visible eyes, I know it's watching me. There's something almost mocking about the way it stands at the edge of the trees, like it's letting me see it on purpose. Like it wants me to understand that it can be loud when it chooses to be loud, and silent when it chooses to be silent. My heartbeat is roaring in my ears. My hands shake as I pull my keys out. I fumble them, trying to get the right one into the lock, and they slip from my fingers. They hit the dirt and gravel at my feet. I crouch down fast, snatch them up, and when I stand again, I catch movement to my left. Another figure stands along the tree line. For a second, my mind refuses to accept it. It tries to turn it into a trick of shadows, a branch shaped like a person, anything but what it is. Then I hear a branch crack to my right. I snap my head that way. More movement, more shapes separating from the darkness. They are standing farther apart than the first two, scattered along the edge of the woods like they've always been there, like they've been waiting for me to notice. There aren't two of them. There are many. In the dim light, they look dark and twisted, but the outline is clear enough to make my stomach drop. They are human-shaped. Not perfectly human. Not convincingly human, but close enough. Upright, still, silent, watching. The world narrows down to the car door and my own shaking hand. I throw myself inside, slam the door, and jam the key into the ignition. The engine starts with a rough growl. I press the gas hard, too hard, and the tires spin before catching the dirt road. Gravel sprays behind me as I tear away from the woods. As the car speeds forward, the full horror of it finally lands. All this time, I thought I was feeding one creature, one monster that lived in a clearing and took care of my problems. I thought I was the one in control because I brought the food. I thought that made me the smart one. But I wasn't feeding one creature. I was feeding an army. And worse than that, I've been teaching them. Every bag I brought, every offering I left, every night I stood and watched, I was giving them practice, helping them learn our shape, our smell, our sound, helping them get closer to being able to pass for us. They're hungry, and now they know where to find me. And I have a terrible feeling they're not going to wait for me to bring more next time. Story 2. It started on a day I shouldn't have been awake for at all. The sun was still high, bright enough to make the dust in the air look like glitter, and I was already drunk in that ugly, pointless way where you're not even having fun anymore. I'd been drinking since morning, maybe earlier, losing track the way I always did, when I didn't want to think. The can in my hand was lukewarm, the kind of warm that tastes like metal and regret, but I kept sipping anyway. My blazer barely fit anymore. My stomach pushed out under it, and I could feel the button straining every time I moved. Then someone started knocking on my door. Not a normal knock, not the bored tap of a delivery driver. It was fast and frantic, like tiny knuckles rapping out a messy rhythm. Too quick, too eager. The sound cut through the haze in my head and made me pause mid-sip. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. I'd imagined plenty of things lately. But the knocking came again, rapid and impatient, like whoever it was had all day and no manners. I groaned and lumbered across the living room, stepping over piles of junk. The place looked like a long-term disaster zone. Dirty plates, empty cans, clothes that hadn't been washed in who knows how long, a stale smell of old alcohol and spoiled food that had seeped into the carpet. I told myself I didn't care, but even through my drunken fog, I could feel the shame of it. I just didn't have the energy to fix anything, not the room, not myself. I got to the door and yanked it open. Sunlight blasted into my face so hard it felt like being hit. My eyes watered instantly. I squinted, blinking against the glare, my brain struggling to catch up. For a moment, I couldn't even tell what was standing on my front step. All I saw was a dark shape against the white light, like a silhouette cut out of the day. Then the shape cleared its throat. The sound was wrong, thick and wet like something pulling phlegm out of a pipe. It wasn't a human cough. It sounded mechanical and biological at the same time, like a clogged engine trying to start. My stomach turned before my mind could even decide what it meant. I blinked again, and the thing on my step came into focus. It was small, maybe the height of a child, but it didn't look like any child I'd ever seen. Its skin was a sick, grayish tone, and it wore a navy blue suit with a matching tie like it had dressed up for a job interview. The suit didn't fit well. It hung strangely on its thin body, and the sleeves looked like they'd been cut and folded to make them shorter. It was bald, and its scalp was covered in little bumps and spots like old scars or blemishes. Its eyes were a nasty yellow that reminded me of bad bruises. It smiled wide, too wide. with a grin that belonged on a court jester or a crooked clown. It held out a grimy hand toward me. The fingers were long, the nails dark with grease. Under its other arm it had a cardboard box, taped together like someone had thrown it into a corner and rebuilt it in a hurry. The box looked damp, stained, and weak, as if it might collapse if you held it too tight. "Good morrow, sir. Good morrow, indeed," it said, voice high and sing-song. "You look like your life is plagued by misdeed." I just stared. My brain did a slow, confused turn. Part of me tried to laugh. Part of me tried to slam the door. Another part of me wondered if I'd finally crossed some invisible line and died on my couch from alcohol poisoning. And this was my punishment. Some weird little creature welcoming me into whatever came next. I swayed slightly in the doorway, still gripping my warm can like it was an anchor. The creature kept its hand out, patient, smiling like it knew me. Since I was half convinced I was dreaming, I did the dumb thing. I reached out and took its greasy hand. Its skin felt cold, almost damp. I shook it too hard, too long, trying to prove something to myself, like if I acted normal, the world would become normal again. The creature gave a delighted little jig on my porch and let out a chortling laugh, the kind of sound you'd expect from someone enjoying a prank. Then, without waiting for an invitation, it scooted past me and entered my house, carrying the box like it belonged there. "Can I help you, man?" I slurred, turning to follow it. The words sounded thick in my mouth. It didn't answer right away. It looked around my living room and made a face, like it had stepped into a public restroom that hadn't been cleaned in months. Its nose wrinkled. Its grin stayed, but the expression in its eyes was sharp and judging. I felt a flash of anger. Who was this thing to look at me like that? But even that anger was weak, drowned under alcohol and exhaustion. The creature moved to my glass end table. It brushed away a layer of sticky gunk with the side of its hand, as if it was wiping crumbs off a counter. Then it set the box down gently. The cardboard made a soft thud against the glass. It patted the top of the box twice and looked at me with a proud, expectant expression, like it had just placed a gift in front of a child. "What's in the box?" I asked, squinting. "It seems, good sir, that I have arrived just in time," it said. "You've been wallowing away in all this grime." Its accent was clearly British, the kind you hear in old movies, exaggerated and a little theatrical. The rhyme made it sound like it was performing rather than speaking. My head throbbed as I tried to follow along. "Come on," I said, impatience rising. "What's in the box?" It rolled its eyes in an exaggerated way, like I was the annoying one. "Relax," it said. "Let me get into my sales pitch. No need to be a whiny." It paused, then finished with a crude insult that didn't sound right in that sing-song voice. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard it correctly. The creature pursed its dry, cracked lips, then straightened its tie as if it was preparing to do business. "Now then," it said, spreading its hands, "I'm here today to change your life. This box right here contains whatever you want: money, power, maybe even a wife." That last word hit me like a hook. My drunk mind snagged on it and wouldn't let go. The creature's grin widened. It could see it had my attention, and it enjoyed that. It leaned toward the box like a magician about to reveal a trick. "Turn that frown upside down," it said, voice bouncing with confidence. With the box, you'll be the hit of the town. It knows you inside and out. If you're cold, it'll give you clothes. If you're hungry, it'll whip up a spotted trout. I stared at the box. Up close, it looked worse. The cardboard was frayed, stained, almost moldy. The tape holding it together was blue and slapped on in uneven strips. The corners sagged as if the cardboard had been soaked and dried again. It looked like something you'd find behind a grocery store, not something that held miracles. My eyes narrowed. Even drunk, I wasn't fully stupid. "What's the catch?" I asked. The creature put a hand to its chest like I'd offended it. "Come now," it said. "No catch, my good man. If something ill befalls you, why, you can always kick me in the—" It giggled again, pleased with itself, and the laugh made my stomach drop. There was something rotten underneath its humor, like it was laughing at a joke I didn't understand yet. Because there was a catch. There is always a catch. I stood there staring at the box, and in that moment, the only thing I wanted rose up in me, so sharp it hurt. Not money, not power, not even the idea of a better life. I wanted one thing that had been eating me alive for months. The creature watched my face change. The grin softened into something that looked almost sympathetic, but I didn't trust it. Its eyes stayed bright and hungry. "Ah," it said quietly, like it had solved a puzzle. "I see your wish, your one regret, the one who got away, that lovely brunette." My throat tightened. Even hearing her described that way made my chest ache. "She said she didn't see a future with me," I snapped. Anger rushing up, hot and messy. The alcohol made it easier to rant. "She tore my heart out and stomped it into pieces. Just like that. Like I was nothing." The creature nodded as if it understood heartbreak better than I did. "All you want," it said, "is her hand in marriage. To whisk her off in a heavenly carriage." I swallowed. Yeah, I hated how accurate it was. I hated that it made the words sound sweet when my thoughts were anything but. I nodded slowly because what else could I do? My mouth felt dry. "Fine," I said, voice low. "I'll take the box if you think it'll help." I reached for my wallet, hands clumsy, and pulled out a wad of wrinkled bills. I didn't even count them. I just wanted this creature gone, and that box open. "Will this do?" I asked. The creature snatched the money so fast it almost took my fingers with it. It didn't thank me. It didn't bow. It just stuffed the cash away with greedy satisfaction. Then it turned and hurried toward the door, almost skipping, like it had somewhere else to be. As it stepped out into the sunlight, it tossed a final set of words over its shoulder, crude and careless, the rhyme falling apart into plain ugliness. It sounded like it didn't care what happened to me at all, like I was just another stop on its route. The door shut behind it, and I was alone with the box. For a moment, I stood still, listening. I expected another knock, another trick, but the house was quiet again, filled only with the faint hum of my old fridge and the far-off sound of traffic from the street. My heart began to race. I moved toward the end table with a desperate kind of excitement, like a kid on Christmas morning tearing through wrapping paper. The box sat there, damp-looking and ugly, but in my mind it glowed with possibility. I imagined her. I imagined fixing everything. I imagined her coming back and laughing at how silly she'd been to ever leave. The fantasy came so easily, so perfectly, that it felt real for a few sweet seconds. I grabbed the blue tape and started peeling it away. The tape fought me, sticky and stubborn. When it finally came loose, the box gave a soft groan like wet cardboard tearing. As I lifted the flaps, a smell burst out so strong I stumbled back. It was decay. Not just a bad smell, an unmistakable stink of rot river water and something dead too long. It hit me like a physical force. My mouth filled with saliva and I gagged. The smile fell right off my face. I jerked back so fast I bumped the table. The box tipped, slid, and fell to the floor. The flaps opened wider on impact, and what was inside tumbled out onto my carpet. It landed with a heavy, ugly slap. I looked down, and for a few seconds my brain refused to name what I was seeing. It was a human hand. A severed hand. The skin was swollen and pale, bloated the way bodies bloat when they sit in water. The fingers were thick and stiff. On one finger was a brass ring, dull and tarnished, still snug against the flesh as if it had never been removed. My stomach dropped out of me. I backed away until my calves hit the couch. My whole body went cold, like someone had poured ice water down my spine. I stared at the hand on my carpet, the smell filling the room, and something inside me began to shake apart. It was her hand. I knew it. I knew the ring. I knew the shape of her fingers. I knew in that horrible, instant way, you know the truth even if you'd rather die than accept it. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. My hands stayed clenched at my sides, shaking. I stood there breathing fast, trying to wake up, trying to blink myself out of whatever nightmare this was. But the hand didn't vanish. The smell didn't fade. That was a few days ago. I haven't left my house since. I keep the curtains mostly closed, but sometimes I peek through them, expecting flashing lights to fill the street. I keep waiting for the police to show up, for neighbors to gather outside, for someone to pound on my door and demand answers. Every time a car passes too slowly, my chest tightens. Every time I hear footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment, I freeze. The hand is still on the carpet. It clings there like it belongs, sunk into the fibers. I still haven't touched it. I don't know what to do with it. I don't even know if I can move it without making things worse. The carpet threads press into the decaying flesh, and the smell has settled into the room like smoke. The stink of the river is the strongest part of it. That muddy, fishy odor that sticks to your clothes after you've been too close to stagnant water. If I force myself to look closely, I can see tiny bite marks along the fingertips, little neat nibbles like fish had tested it, like something in the water had sampled her while she drifted. The sight makes my vision swim. Sometimes I think I'll throw up, but there's nothing left in me except bile and cheap beer. I don't understand how that goblin thing could have done it. I don't understand how it found her, how it dragged her out of the river, how it brought part of her to my door like it was delivering a package. And worse than that, I don't understand how it knew what I'd done. Because that's the part my mind keeps circling back to, again and again, until it hurts. It knew. It knew the secret I've been burying under alcohol and denial. It knew the truth I thought I'd hidden so well that even I could pretend it didn't exist. The day after the box arrived, a note appeared under my door. I hadn't heard anyone in the hallway. No footsteps, no knock. I only found it because I went to check the mail slot, like I was on autopilot. And there it was, a dirty piece of paper folded in half. The message was written in messy, confident handwriting, like whoever wrote it was having fun. It was a rhyme again, the same ugly little rhythm, but the words were sharper this time, more direct. The note told me it hoped I enjoyed what was in the box. It joked that it definitely wasn't socks. Then it warned me that it would be a real shame if more pieces started turning up. It mentioned the police, hinted at my life falling apart, and then came the price. $1,000 a week. That was the cost of its silence. The cost of keeping the rest of the world from knowing what I'd done. The note ended by telling me to stay compliant like I was an employee being reminded to follow company policy. I read it twice, then 3 times, my hands trembling so badly the paper shook. I wanted to rip it up, burn it, flush it down the toilet, but I couldn't make myself destroy it. It felt like evidence, like a leash, like proof that this wasn't a drunken hallucination. I sit here now in my filthy living room with that hand rotting into my carpet, and I can't pretend anymore. I can't act like I'm the victim of some random cruel trick. I know exactly why it chose me. I know why it showed up at my door in the middle of the day. I know why it smiled like that, because I deserve it. Maybe that's the worst part. The way the fear mixes with something else, something heavier. Guilt, shame, the understanding that this isn't bad luck. It's payment. It's consequence. It's the bill finally coming due. I've resigned myself to whatever happens next. I don't have the energy to fight it, and I don't have the right to beg for mercy. I just sit and stink and wait for the next knock, the next note, the next demand. I never should have opened that box. I never should have answered the door at all. But I did. And now something out there knows me inside and out just like it promised. It knows what I've done. It knows what I'm afraid of. And it knows exactly how to squeeze me until there's nothing left. Story 3. I have trouble sleeping. I always have, but it got worse after my dad's divorce turned into a murder-suicide. He killed my mom, then killed himself. If I hadn't been at a friend's house that night, I would have been part of it too. The police called him a would-be family killer, like that label was supposed to fit neatly on a file folder and make it easier to understand. During the interviews, they told me there was a note left on his body, something about asking God for forgiveness. I don't know if that was true. I don't know what's worse, him writing a note like he had the right to ask for anything, or the idea that the police said it just to close the story and move on. Afterward, I went to live with his brother, my uncle. People love to call that kind of thing heartwarming, but they only say that when they don't know what happened behind closed doors. Uncle Tommy took me in, yes, but Uncle Tommy was a violent alcoholic with a mess of issues I don't even want to list. He was the kind of man who made every room smaller just by standing in it. He took up space in the air, in the noise, in the way you learned to breathe quietly so you wouldn't remind him you existed. You can do the math. 6 years with him didn't look like the worst possible life from the outside. No broken bones, no missing meals, nothing that would make teachers call social services. But it was still a kind of slow damage. The kind that gets into your head and teaches your body new rules for surviving. He was a narcissist through and through, convinced he was a hero for saving me. He liked to remind me how much I owed him. He said I should be grateful for his sacrifice, like I was some kind of burden he carried to prove he was a good man. I'm still dealing with what it did to me. I don't talk about it much because people get uncomfortable fast, and because I don't like being graphic. I don't enjoy dark stories for the sake of being dark, but reality is reality. Pretending it didn't happen doesn't fix anything. The worst of it got worse as I got older. It wasn't just his drinking or his shouting or the way he could turn sweet and cruel in the same sentence. It was the things he said, the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. "You're aging so nicely," he would say, running his fingers through my hair like he owned me, like I was something he'd raised for himself. That should tell you enough. Living with him trained me to notice things other people don't. It trained me to hear the shape of a person in a house. I can count footsteps in the dark. I can tell when bare feet drag slightly on cheap flooring, when sweaty socks stick and release with that faint rubbery sound, when someone is trying to move quietly, but their body is too heavy and unsteady from drinking. I learned patterns, I learned rhythms, and I learned keys. The sound of keys still makes my nerves jump. Not just any keys either. There's a difference between a few keys and a heavy ring. There's a difference between 3 keys and 20. My body doesn't react to 3. It doesn't react to a ton of keys either, because that's rare. But 6 keys is the sound that lived in my chest. Uncle Tommy had 6 keys. I learned that sound like it was part of the weather. I got out as soon as I turned 18. I left fast, with just enough stuff to survive, and I never looked back. I ended up living with a co-worker from the warehouse. His name is Derek. He's fine. If we didn't work the same assembly line shifts, we wouldn't be friends. We wouldn't even talk. But when I explained my situation, some of it anyway, he offered to let me rent a room. It was cheap, and I needed out, so I took it. We're not supposed to be doing it. The landlord can't know I'm there. The landlord also can't know about any pets. That part became a problem because of what happened at work. I remember the day perfectly because the warehouse has its own soundtrack, and I know it like I know my own breathing. Machines hum. Rollers clatter. Scanners beep. A belt moves packages along like a river of cardboard. Most of it becomes background noise after a while, easy to tune out if your mind is somewhere else. That day, something cut through it, a high-pitched whining. It wasn't constant. It came and went. At first, I assumed it was a loose roller or a bolt coming undone, something that would become somebody else's maintenance ticket later. But the sound kept returning in a way that didn't match the machines. It sounded thin and desperate. Earlier in the shift, a return package had been flagged because the weight didn't match what it was supposed to be. That happens sometimes. Something gets swapped. Something gets damaged. A label gets messed up. I tossed it into a bin with the other rejects and didn't think much about it. But when I finally rolled the bin over to check the errors more closely, I noticed one box with little holes punched into the side. Small holes, like someone had stabbed it with a pen over and over. The cardboard around them was bent inward. Whoever made them wasn't careful. They were trying to make air. The whining came again, and this time there was no doubt. It was coming from inside that box. I tore it open immediately. I didn't stop to get a supervisor. I didn't stop to think about rules. As soon as the flaps came apart, I felt my throat tighten with nausea. Not because of what I saw, but because of the fact that anyone could do this at all. A kitten was inside. A tiny black kitten, so small she could have fit in one hand. She was curled up in the corner of the box like she'd tried to hide from the shaking and noise. She looked weak, her little mouth opening and closing with soft, broken mews that barely made it into the air. Her fur was dull and dusty, and she trembled when I lifted her out. She couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. I just stood there for a second, holding her, feeling something in my chest crack open. All I wanted to do was protect her. I didn't even know her, but the need was immediate and fierce. I flagged for help, and my supervisor waddled over, annoyed before he even saw what was happening. Mike always moved like he was offended he had to exist outside his office. "Why are you behind on those?" he started. Then his eyes landed on the kitten in my arms. His face shifted, confused, like he couldn't decide whether to be disgusted or amused. "Why do you have that?" "Some sick asshole sent her as a return," I said, my voice sharp enough that I surprised myself. For once, Mike didn't have a smart comment ready. He just stared at the kitten, then looked at me like I'd brought a problem into his life on purpose. "What do you think we should do with it?" he asked, as if I was the one in charge. "That's why I called you over here," I said. "I don't know what to do." I held her closer to my chest. She was warm, but not the healthy kind of warm. The kind that felt like a fever trying not to fail. Mike shrugged. "Well, it's just a cat," he said. "Toss it outside or something." That sentence hit me like a slap. I felt anger so sudden and strong it scared me. It wasn't just anger at him. It was anger at every person who treats small lives like trash because it's inconvenient care. For a second, I understood how people do terrible things, how they step over a line and never come back because something inside them snaps and says, "Now it's your turn to suffer." Instead, I did the only responsible thing. I walked away. Mike shouted after me, but I didn't even register the words. I held the kitten tight and left the floor. I didn't care if it cost me my job. I could get another job. I couldn't leave her there. There was a vet not far from the warehouse. I carried her in like she was made of glass. When I explained that I worked at the warehouse nearby and found her in a return box, the staff looked horrified. They didn't even charge me. They examined her right away, gave her fluids, checked her breathing, gave her shots. They said she was extremely weak and needed to be monitored overnight. Before I left, one of them asked me a question that made me pause. "So what are you going to name her?" I looked down at the kitten, at her tiny black face, and the way her eyes blinked slowly like she was fighting sleep. I didn't have to think long. The name came to me so suddenly, it almost felt like it had already existed. "Boxes," I said. That's how I ended up with her. This fat little sack of trouble, who somehow grew into the biggest personality in the smallest body. She's sweet, annoying, stubborn, and she loves to sleep on my upper chest right under my chin, like she owns the place. She purrs like a machine and snores like an exhausted truck driver with asthma. It makes breathing difficult, and somehow it still comforts me more than anything else. Derek didn't even mind the cat. He acted like he didn't care, like it was whatever. But we both knew we had to keep it quiet. The landlord can't know. The landlord can't know I'm living there either. But that's another problem. I didn't lose my job either. Mike complained. I got lectured, but I didn't care. Who ships a kitten like a return item? Who puts a living thing in a box and sends it down a conveyor belt like it's a blender? I hate people sometimes. I hate how easy it is for them to be cruel. Because of my past, nighttime is hard for me. I don't sleep easily. I wake up at every little sound, the way the house settles, the hum of a distant appliance, a floorboard creak. Everything has the power to yank me back into old fear. Boxes change that, at least a little. When she curls up on my chest and purrs, something in my brain finally unclenches. And when I do fall asleep, I sleep heavier than I used to. I don't know if it's the dander, or some allergy I haven't bothered to discover, or just the warmth and vibration of her purr. But she drags me down into sleep like a weighted blanket. 2 weeks ago, the first strange thing happened. My routine is always the same. Lock the door, turn off the lights, pull the covers up, wait for Boxes. Boxes arrives. She climbs onto my chest. She settles in. I pass out. That night I had trouble sleeping anyway. Boxes was snoring, loud enough that I made a mental note to ask a vet about it someday, but my body stayed tense. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Derek's footsteps are familiar to me now. He steps, then shuffles. Sometimes he stops like he forgot what he was doing, then retraces his steps. His walking is inconsistent, almost random, like his mind is always half somewhere else. These footsteps were not Derek's. They came in pairs, 2 steady thuds in a constant rhythm, soft because of the carpet, but heavy enough that I felt them more than I heard them. The rhythm was eerily familiar, and it took me a moment to place it. When it clicked, my blood went cold. It was exactly how my uncle walked. My hand went under my pillow without me thinking about it, fingers wrapping around the switchblade I keep hidden there. Boxes let out a small protest meow when I shifted, then tried to settle back down as if she couldn't care less about whatever terror was flooding my body. Not now, I whispered at her, sharper than I meant to. She ignored me like cats do. I lay there listening as the footsteps moved back and forth outside my door, like whoever it was wanted to enter but couldn't, like they were waiting for something. That's what my uncle used to do when I started locking my door at night. He would pace. He would pause. Sometimes he would knock softly, not hard enough to wake the whole house, just hard enough to let me know he was there. Sometimes I'd hear a dragging sound, like metal sliding across the door's surface, like a key being scraped along it. That same soft knock came now and then, and my skin crawled. I told myself it had to be something else. It had to be. I didn't even live with him anymore. I'd been gone for months. There was no way he could be here. But the rhythm didn't stop for a long time. Eventually, exhaustion won. Boxes snoring and purring filled the silence between those footsteps until my brain couldn't hold the fear up anymore. I passed out. In the morning, I tried to laugh it off. I told myself it was a nightmare, or Derek had a friend over, or someone sleepwalked in the hallway. Not a great theory, but it was a theory. That theory collapsed when I asked Derek casually if anyone had been over. He just said, "I wish," and looked offended at the idea that his life had that much excitement. The next day, nothing happened. Then another. I started to believe my mind had made it up. Paranoia is easy when your past is full of reasons to be afraid. I told myself I was being unreasonable. What were the odds my uncle found me, came to this apartment, and paced outside my door for hours? It sounded insane. I refused to feed that kind of thinking. Life went back to its dull routine. Work, home, scrolling on my phone, sleep. Then last week, something woke me in the middle of the night. A loud bang, not like a gunshot, more like a body hitting the floor. Like someone fell hard and hit their head, then the rest of them followed. The sound was so heavy it made my mattress feel like it trembled. Boxes startled only because I startled. She hopped off my chest and moved away, clearly deciding I was too dramatic to sleep on. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. "Glad nothing bothers you," I whispered. I sleep with a nightlight now. I didn't used to, but there were nights at my uncle's house when I woke up and saw him sitting in the corner of my room in complete darkness. So still I almost thought he was a pile of clothes. He didn't know I could see him, but I could. I could see the way his chest rose and fell too fast, like he was breathing through anger. I don't know if he ever knew I caught him. I told him I was afraid of the dark so I could keep the nightlight on without him arguing. After that, he didn't come into my room as often, at least not that I noticed. So yes, I have a nightlight. It gives me a crumb of security. That night, after the bang, I stared at my door for a long time. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. The building settling, Derek dropping something, anything. When I closed my eyes again, I heard it. 2 thuds in quick succession. Louder than before. "Derek," I called, voice shaky. No response. I looked for boxes, hoping she would do the normal cat thing and freak out at the noise, but she was asleep like nothing mattered. I reached over and ran my fingers through her fur, trying to ground myself. The dim light glowed warm and soft, and I stared at it like it was a shield. Thud, thud. This time it was close. Too close. I turned my head slowly toward the door. The door was slightly open. I wanted to get up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run into the hallway and turn on every light in the apartment. But a thought stopped me. Sharp and irrational and powerful. If I look at whatever is there, I will make it real. Like acknowledging it would invite it closer. The air felt suddenly hot and stale, like humidity filling the room. I pulled the covers over my head and squeezed my eyes shut. My teeth chattered. I tried praying to a God I don't believe in. I lay there holding my breath, listening. The mattress dipped slightly, like something stepped onto the bed. At first, I thought it was boxes coming back. I felt that familiar little pressure of paws moving up the blankets. But then the weight increased. It still moved like a cat, but heavier, much heavier, like a cat made out of something dense. The pressure crawled toward my chest, slow and deliberate. Right beside my head, I heard a soft wheeze. I stayed under the covers until morning. When daylight came, my door was shut again, locked like it always was. I couldn't bring myself to confront Derek about it. I couldn't figure out how to do it without sounding insane or accusing him of something disgusting. So instead, I asked casual questions about his night, trying to find an explanation I could hold on to. He said he'd been gaming and doing some exercise, and when I pushed, he got embarrassed and made it clear he meant something private. I cut him off before he could share details I didn't want in my brain. But when I asked if he heard any loud thuds, he looked honestly confused and said no. That should have comforted me. It didn't. The strangest part was that I never heard footsteps that night, only those two heavy thuds, like something dropping from a standing position onto the floor. There was no way to make it make sense, so I didn't. I filed it under the same category as nightmares, even though it didn't feel like a dream. Then things were normal again for a few nights. I started to think it had passed. That stress had made my mind do weird things. I was exhausted. I was jumpy. I'd been through enough to have nightmares for the rest of my life. That explanation was easy. 2 nights ago, I fell asleep without trouble. For once, the world seemed quiet. Then I woke up to voices. 2 people talking, muffled, like they were behind a wall. At first, I assumed Derek had brought someone home, because that would be the simplest answer. But the voices didn't sound like flirting. They sounded tense, like someone pleading, like someone trying to talk a situation down from the edge. I glanced toward my nightlight and instinctively reached for boxes, expecting her to be on my chest or curled against my side. She wasn't. I saw her near the sliding closet door, pawing at it hard. The door rattled, the sound sharp in the quiet room. She pawed again and again like she was trying to get in. Boxes, I whispered, confused. Come back here. She ignored me. She kept pawing, more intense now, like a dog trying to dig into something. The closet is where her food is stored. I assumed she was hungry and being dramatic because that's her personality. You hungry? What's wrong? I asked, already irritated because I was half asleep. I got out of bed and walked over to the closet. The door was slightly open, and I reached to slide it shut, thinking maybe it had gotten stuck. As I got close, my blood turned ice. I could hear my father's voice coming from inside the closet. I froze with my hand inches from the door. For a second, I thought I was still asleep. But the voices continued, clear enough that I could recognize them. My mother's voice, my father's voice, arguing. You can't be here, my mother's voice said. Honey, please, my father replied. We can work this out. You got caught, Stephen, she said. And hearing my father's name out loud made my stomach twist. You played with my heart and our family, and you lost. I hope it was worth it. Don't make me call the police. There was silence, heavy and thick, like the room itself was listening. Then my father's voice again, smaller this time. I love you. Another long silence followed, then rustling, then a click, unmistakable. Stephen, are you serious? My mother said, her voice rising. Put the gun down, you can... My father's voice turned sharp. Where's Cassandra? She's not here, my mother said. Where's Cassandra? He shouted. Fuck you, my mother snapped, and the rawness of it made my eyes burn. I couldn't imagine her saying that. Not my mother. Not the version of her I keep in my head. Then a deafening bang exploded from inside the closet. I stumbled backward, my hands flying to my mouth. My knees went weak. My ears rang. I knew in some awful instinctive way that I was hearing something that already happened. Something recorded into the walls of my life. A second gunshot followed, quieter only because my brain was already shattered by the first. I fell backward onto the floor and started crying. Not neat tears, but the kind that come from deep inside your body when it can't hold anything anymore. Boxes came over, trilled softly, and climbed onto my chest like she always does. She settled under my chin, purring. The vibration ran through my throat. For once, it wasn't comforting. She felt heavier, much heavier. Heavy enough that I struggled to breathe. The purr felt too thick, like it had a wet edge to it. I forced out a shaky whisper anyway because I didn't know what else to do. Thanks, boxes. When morning came, I tried to tell myself it was just a nightmare. A vivid one, sure, but my brain has always been cruel in its sleep. Still, it didn't feel like my usual dreams. My usual nightmares are simple. A bald man chasing me with a belt, my uncle stomping down a hallway, the same fear in different costumes. This was different. This felt like being made to listen to a moment I wasn't there for, like someone had opened a door to the past and forced me to stand in it. The next morning I went to talk to Derek, hoping he'd say something that grounded me. But he spoke first, and his tone made my stomach tighten. "Yo, Caddy," he said. "I need to talk to you." He always had a new nickname for me, and I hated all of them. "Yes," I said, trying to sound normal. "I know we ain't supposed to have a cat in here," he said. "But I thought you said she'd stay in your room." "She," I corrected automatically. "And yes, my door is always closed." He didn't look angry, just confused. "Yeah, well, last night Boxes was in my room during my private exercise time," he said, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. "And she wouldn't stop staring at me." My skin prickled. "When?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "Late." For a second, I felt relief. If Boxes had been in his room, then maybe what I heard in mine was just a dream. Maybe the voices were my brain doing what it does. Maybe the thud-thud sounds were random. Maybe I was fine. "Sorry about that," I said, forcing my voice steady. "It won't happen again?" He nodded, still looking weirded out. "I mean, I don't mind, but if she's found wandering, they might kick us out." "Won't happen again," I repeated. Then, carefully, I added, "Did you hear anything strange last night?" He shook his head and looked at me like he was about to ask if I was okay, but didn't want to open that door. "Did you hear anything strange last night?" he asked back like he was mirroring me. "Nothing to worry about," I lied, because I didn't want him thinking I was losing it. He waved it off, then said something that made me pause. "And what you feeding her?" he asked. "Little rascal weighs a ton." I forced a laugh. "She's not that heavy, Derek." He smiled like he knew something I didn't. Yeah, he said. "Whatever you say." At work that day, Mike was back to pacing near my station. I heard his keys before I saw him. 3 keys, not 6, so my body didn't go into full panic mode, but I still hated the way he hovered. Cameras were everywhere in the warehouse, and I didn't like the feeling of being watched on top of already being watched. After the 6th pass, I finally asked him what he wanted. "Mike," I said, "is something wrong?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He bit his lip like he was nervous. "How's that little rat you found in the box?" he asked. I was exhausted and angry and not in the mood. "Surprised you cared," I said. He put on his smug little middle management smile like it was armor. "Oh yeah," he said. "I actually cared about that little black, whatever it was." "It was a kitten," I corrected. "A kitten, Mike." "Right," he said quickly. "Well, I forgot to tell you. This was included in the return box. Been meaning to give it to you." He handed me a folded sheet of lined paper and then walked away fast, like he couldn't wait to be done with it. I stared at the paper for a long time without opening it. Why would there be a note? Why would someone ship a kitten and leave a note too? It didn't make sense. I told myself it was probably a prank. Something stupid. Something meant to freak me out. But I didn't throw it away. I couldn't. Something about it felt like a weight in my pocket, like it wanted to be read. I took it home. That night, I even did something I almost never do. I ate dinner with Derek. He brought home Chipotle and talked about cilantro like he'd just discovered it, and I watched him eat like a child with a burrito. I asked him why one of my Lunchables was missing from the fridge. He swore it wasn't him, and he seemed genuinely confused. He referred to himself in the third person, which he does when he's nervous, and I didn't have the energy to fight about it. Then he asked me about the note. "Did you write that letter by the door?" he said. "No," I said. "Mike gave it to me. Said it was in the return package I found boxes in." Derek looked unsettled in a way I couldn't explain. "You read it yet?" he asked. I laughed nervously, trying to keep it light. "I'm sure it's just some prank," I said. "I wouldn't take it seriously." He looked relieved, like he was glad I hadn't opened it. Then he said he was going to play games with his friends, and the conversation died there. I went to my room. Boxes greeted me as usual, rubbing against my legs. When I bent to pet her, I noticed something on her fur. Tiny brown specks like dirt or dried mud. That didn't make sense. She stayed in my room most of the day, unless Derek had been letting her out. The idea annoyed me, but I was too tired to deal with it. I watched a movie on my phone with boxes beside me. I gave her wet food because she'd been good company. I felt that familiar gratitude for her, the simple comfort of having something alive that wanted to be near me. We found each other, and that mattered. Later, I fell asleep. I woke up to boxes wheezing. It was right by my head, louder than usual, rougher. I opened my eyes and reached for her. She wasn't there, and my nightlight wasn't on. I swallowed hard. My room was darker than it should have been, heavy blackness pressing in. I felt around the bed, searching for warm fur, for anything familiar. Nothing. Then I saw a figure standing at the end of my bed. It was thin and stretched, like someone starved down to their frame. Its chest rose and fell in an exaggerated way, like it was forcing air in and out. Its head looked pale, almost ivory white. In the darkness, two amber eyes stared back at me, unblinking. I couldn't move. My muscles locked like my body had decided freezing was the only option. The wheezing grew louder with each breath, and under it was a gurgling sound from deep inside, wet and thick, like phlegm shifting in a throat that wasn't built right. Then it spoke. "You're aging so nicely." The words came out wrong, like a human voice copied by something that didn't understand mouths. The tone, though, the tone was perfect. The cadence was perfect. It was my uncle's voice, chopped up and stitched together by imitation. I felt myself shrink into the mattress. The thing didn't move. It just stood there, breathing, staring. I made one small attempt to sit up, and it growled, low and warning. The sound turned my stomach. I lay back down instantly, and the wheezing softened, like it approved. Then I felt it. Little indents on the bed. Pause. Something walking toward me with the careful steps of a cat. It came closer and closer until it climbed onto me. I pulled the covers up, hiding under them like a child. The weight settled on my upper chest, under my chin, exactly where boxes always slept. Only this weight was crushing. I couldn't take a full breath. My lungs struggled. The thing purred, but the sound wasn't a normal purr. It was wet, gurgling, full of thick fluid. I peeked over the edge of the blanket. Amber eyes stared directly into mine. It didn't blink. It didn't look away. It just kept staring and gurgling like it was enjoying my fear. Slowly, as the minutes crawled, the gurgle changed. It thinned out. It softened. It became the purr I knew, the purr that had lulled me to sleep 100 nights. I don't know when I finally passed out, but I must have, because sunlight eventually warmed the sheets and I found myself able to move again. I got out of bed, shaking. "Hey, Boxes," I said, trying to sound casual, like last night hadn't happened at all. She stretched like a normal cat and trotted over to her food. I poured Meow Mix into her bowl more than usual because my hands wouldn't stop trembling, and feeding her felt like something safe I could do. She ate eagerly, tail flicking like she was perfectly fine. I looked around my room for any sign of that figure, any sign I hadn't dreamed it. Nothing. No footprints. No claw marks. No smell. Just my messy room and my cat eating breakfast. I tried to tell myself again that it was a nightmare, a stress dream, sleep paralysis, my brain replaying old trauma in a new costume. But then I saw the note. It was sitting on the plastic tote I use as a nightstand, still folded, waiting. I remembered what Mike said, that it had been inside the return box with Boxes. I watched Boxes eat, watched her small body move normally, and I realized my hands were shaking harder. I grabbed the note quickly, like I was stealing something I wasn't supposed to have. I left the room and went into the kitchen so I wouldn't have to look at my bed while I read it. I held the paper tight, took a deep breath, and unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was neat. The message was short, but every sentence felt like it was pressing down on me. It said the kitten was born in a litter of 6, and something was wrong with it. It said the writer loved animals and never thought they would do what they did, but they didn't know what else to do. It said the kitten kept getting heavier and heavier, even though it stayed a normal size. It said they woke up in the middle of the night and it tore their husband's throat open. It said it was eating him, yowling the whole time, and they couldn't pull it away from the body. It said they tried to kill it. They tried to get rid of it, but it always came back as a newborn, no matter how many times they tried. It said they didn't know what else to do. Then, at the end, it apologized. "I am so sorry." I stood in the kitchen holding that paper with numb fingers. My mouth went dry. My mind went back over every strange detail I'd noticed and tried to dismiss the weight on my chest, the brown flecks on her fur, the way Derek said she weighed a ton, the way she pawed at the closet door like she was waiting for something inside it to talk. I looked down the hallway toward my room, and the apartment felt different now. Smaller, hotter, like the air had thickened, like something was listening from behind the walls. And the worst part was how quickly one thought settled into place, calm and certain, like it had been waiting for me to finally catch up. I wasn't imagining it. And I wasn't just living with a cat. Story 4. I'm sorry. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound like the kind of lie people post online when they want attention. The difference is that lies don't park 2 black SUVs outside your house every night for 2 straight weeks and pretend they aren't watching your windows. Believe me or don't. That isn't really why I'm writing this. I'm writing because I need it somewhere outside my head, and because I keep thinking that if I say it out loud, if I put it in normal words, it will stop feeling like the world slipped a gear and never shifted back. The road near my old house is still blocked off. If you drive out that way, there are orange barriers and flashing signs and men in reflective vests who won't meet your eyes. They tell people it's a gas leak. There is no gas line there. Dina hated open flames. We had electric everything, stove, heater, the whole thing, because she said indoor fire felt primitive, wrong, like keeping a predator in your kitchen and pretending it's a pet. I used to tease her for it. I used to tell her she was being dramatic. That's funny now in a sick way because she was right about more than I ever wanted her to be right about. Dana and I had been married 10.5 months, less than a year, long enough to learn each other's habits and begin to build the strange, private language couples build. We were stupid in love, the embarrassing kind. The kind where one of us would leave to buy toothpaste and the other would already be texting before they reached the store. Dinah used to send me photos of random things, shadows on the wall, a weird cloud, the shape of a bruise on her knee, like she was trying to make sure I saw the world the way she did. We fought, too. We fought badly, loudly, over nothing and then over everything. Dishes, money, my work at the Institute. Her saying I wasn't listening. Me saying she talked about feelings like she was translating them from a manual written in a language she didn't like. That was a cruel thing to say. It was also, in hindsight, the closest I ever came to saying the truth out loud without knowing it. That comment made her cry. I apologized for 2 days. I meant it. I held her and told her I was stressed, that I didn't mean it, that I loved her. She forgave me in the way she always did, slowly, carefully, like forgiveness was something that had to be assembled correctly, or it might fall apart. I didn't know then how close I was to the edge of the real story. The night it happened, I came home late. I was shaking from too much coffee and not enough food, and from that bright electric pressure that hits when you've been staring at a problem for too long, and then suddenly it breaks open in your hands. I had done it. Not built anything, not made a working machine, that's not how it works. But the math, the ugly part, the part that everyone above me had politely called impossible. Faster than light. Star drive. Call it whatever you want. If you've ever read any pop science, you've seen the words. Most people treat it like fantasy. At the Institute, it was treated like a career-ending joke unless you had the right funding and the right silence around you. I kept my head down for years, doing safe work in the daylight and dangerous work at night. That night, I had the proof in my bag. Not just scribbles, not just a half idea. A full set of equations, constraints, energy requirements, and something else. Something ugly that made it clear it wasn't just a math trick. It could be built. It would work. It would rip the world open if someone with enough resources decided to try. I came home shaking because I knew that if I was right, everything changed. And if I was wrong, I'd wasted years and maybe my mind along with them. Dina had dinner ready. That should have scared me right away because Dinah did not cook when she was happy. She cooked when she was trying not to fall apart. Cooking was what she did when she needed something she could control. Timers, ingredients, steps, a beginning and an end. The table was set. Candles were lit. Cheap ones, the kind from a grocery store. One had already burned down into a sad, melted blob that leaned like it was tired. There was pasta, garlic, wine. Dina was wearing one of my shirts with bare legs and wet hair, like she'd just stepped out of the shower. The candlelight turned her skin warm, made her eyes look soft. God, she was beautiful. That's one of the things that makes me feel sick. Not just that she lied to me, not just that I was part of her job. It's that even now, even after knowing what she was, I can still see her in my head and feel my body react like she was home. I can still miss her. I can still want her. I hate that about myself. She looked at me and said, "You're late." I tried to joke. My brain was buzzing, and I wanted to pretend it was a normal night. I said, "You're scary." She laughed, but it wasn't right. It came a beat too late, like she'd calculated when laughter should happen and then delivered it. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Husbands do, though. Not because we're smarter, but because we're trained by repetition. You learn a person's micro-expressions, their timing, the way they breathe when they're lying, the way they swallow when they're afraid. That laugh was wrong. I felt the wrongness like a thin wire across my skin, a warning I could have followed if I wanted to. But I didn't. I wanted dinner. I wanted Dina. I wanted that stupid shining moment where I got to tell my wife I'd done something impossible and to watch her be proud of me. So I ignored the wire. Dina crossed the room and kissed me before I could even set my bag down. It wasn't a sweet kiss. It was hard, teeth and wine and salt. Like she was angry at my mouth, like she needed to shut me up before I said anything. Then there was a taste I didn't recognize, bitter, chemical, under the garlic and wine. I tried to pull back. I tried to say, "What the hell is that?" I think I did say it, or tried to, but my tongue went thick and slow. My lips didn't want to shape words. A numbness spread through my fingers like cold water. My bag slid off my shoulder and hit the floor. I heard the soft thump of it, and in it I heard the weight of the notebook and the weight of what it meant. Dina caught me as I started to fold. Caught me like I weighed nothing. That was another thing she forgot to hide. Dina wasn't strong in a gym way. She didn't lift weights. She didn't talk about fitness. She didn't even like carrying heavy grocery bags. But she caught me effortlessly, like my body was a coat slipping off a chair. She lowered me down onto the kitchen tile. Gentle, careful. The way you lower someone who is drunk and you're trying to keep them from hitting their head. The way you handle something breakable you don't want to damage. I could feel the cold tile against my cheek. I could smell the soap she used to clean the floor, faint under the food. I couldn't move. Not couldn't move like fear. Not like my muscles froze. I mean, my body felt disconnected, like someone had unplugged me. I could breathe shallowly. I could see, I could hear, I could feel, but only in blunt impressions. Cold tile, warm light, the brush of Dina's hand. She sat on the floor and pulled my head into her lap. Then she wiped spit from my chin with her thumb. That almost broke me. I know how pathetic that sounds. But when someone poisons you and still wipes your mouth because she can't stand seeing you messy, your brain doesn't know where to put it. It doesn't fit in any box. It's cruelty and care braided together so tightly you can't pull them apart. Dinah was crying by then, quietly. Not the kind of crying that looks good in movies. Ugly crying, nose running, shoulders shaking, trying to keep it silent, which was very Dinah because even while she was destroying my life, she didn't want to take up too much space doing it. Then she told me just enough. Real people don't explain everything. Only characters do. Real people choke on it. They repeat themselves. They say half of what they mean and leave the rest in their eyes. She said she wasn't from here, not from Earth. She said she'd been sent because of me. Not because I was special yet, she said. Because I might become special. Because certain people on my planet, people like me, tended to open certain doors, and her people had ways of predicting which minds were likely to do it. My name came up on some list. She was assigned. She was placed near me like a chess piece. She had been told to get close and push me away from certain work, slow me down, pull me left when I was walking right, and she had. The job I didn't take because she convinced me the city was bad for us. The paper I abandoned because she made me feel guilty for working so much. The nights she pulled me back into bed when I was close to a breakthrough. The surprise weekend trip she begged me to take right before a deadline. The fights she started when I was too focused. The tears she used like a tool without even seeming to know she was using them. She said her people told her to kill me months earlier. She didn't. Not because she disobeyed exactly. She stalled. She delayed. She found reasons. She traded time for mercy until she ran out of time. She told me humans couldn't be allowed out there, out into whatever space her people lived in. She said we liked playing with fire too much. Not yet, maybe not ever. We were too fast, too angry, too good at turning pain into tools. She said that like she hated us. Then she touched my face again, like she was trying to see if love had finally worn off her fingers. It should have been simple. Kill the husband, take the math, and leave before dawn. Her people were coming to pick her up. My lab would burn in a way that looked like my fault. The Institute would issue bland statements about an accident. Dina would be gone. I would be dead. Clean, clean. The word floated in my mind like a joke. Clean. As if anything about this was clean. My wife sat there holding me the way she used to hold me after panic attacks, except now she was the reason I couldn't move. My face was pressed against her thigh. I could hear her breathing. I could smell her shampoo. It felt like intimacy, and it was also a murder. You're probably imagining me as some naive scientist, good at equations but blind to his own marriage, too obsessed with work to notice what was sleeping beside him. I wish that were true, because then I could blame stupidity. The truth is worse. I had known for months. Not known like I had proof. Not like I saw her sprout extra limbs or glow in the dark. I knew in the way you know when something's wrong in a house you've lived in for years. A draft that shouldn't exist. A door that doesn't sound right when it closes. A familiar person whose shape is just slightly off in your peripheral vision. Dana was wrong in small places. The first crack was a cut on her hand. She nicked herself on a knife while cooking, and I reached for a towel. Before I even unfolded it, the cut had closed, not like it stopped bleeding, like it had never been there. She laughed and told me I'd imagined how bad it was. She said the light played tricks. The second crack was waking up at 3 in the morning and finding her barefoot in the yard. She was standing in the grass, whispering into the dark, and every insect sound had gone silent around her, like the night was holding its breath. When I called her name, she turned too smoothly, too quietly, and said she couldn't sleep. There were other things. Small things you can explain once, maybe twice. After that, explaining starts to feel dumber than the truth. Eventually, I called an old friend of my father's. I didn't want to. I sat with the phone in my hand for almost an hour because making the call meant admitting that the thing in my bed wasn't my wife in any normal sense. When he answered, he didn't sound shocked. That scared me more than any alien story ever could. He asked me 3 questions, calm as a doctor. The third one made it clear he already knew what she was. He didn't say the word alien. He didn't need to. He told me not to confront her, not to try to leave. He said that if she thought I knew, I wouldn't survive the night. That was the moment Dinah stopped being a mystery and became a placement, an operation, a slow poison. It meant sooner or later she would finish what she'd been sent to do, which is exactly what she was doing on my kitchen floor. After that call, I met the others, men and women in normal clothes with dead faces. They didn't introduce themselves with names you could remember. They asked questions nobody should be able to ask unless they already had the shape of the truth. Not just about Dinah being strange, about our sex, about our fights, about her blood, about how she slept, the phrases she used when she was angry, whether she ever got sick, whether animals acted strange around her, whether lights flickered when she touched them, whether I had ever woken up and found her watching me. No one looked shocked by my answers. That was when I learned they'd been chasing this for years. Not aliens exactly, traces, shadows, bad transmissions, burned bodies, missing scientists, houses cleaned too well, corpses found with organs that hadn't failed in any way human medicine understood, as if something had simply switched them off. Nothing whole, nothing useful. They didn't need proof that something non-human existed. They had enough of that. What they needed was one of them alive. But even that wasn't the real prize. The real prize was what came to pick them up. A ship, a working one. Not another fried transmitter, not a melted implant, not a dead thing on a table with all the useful parts burned out. A ship meant propulsion, shielding, power, navigation, alloys, control systems, the actual machinery of how they move through space. Not theory, not guesses. Hardware. So they made me bait. The breakthrough was real, but the timing was staged. The notebook was bait. The public lecture I was supposed to give next week was bait. The hints I let slip at work were bait. My sudden excitement. The late nights, the talk of progress where it could be overheard, all bait. The house was the trap. The plumbing issue we had, part of it. The new water heater Dina hated because it made the closet smell like metal, part of it. The landscaping crew that tore up the backyard for 3 days while she complained about her lavender, part of it too. Under our house, hidden under dirt and concrete and domestic life, was enough human desperation to pull something impossible close enough to touch. But only if she called them. Only if she didn't run. Only if she loved me enough to say goodbye. Do you get how disgusting that is? How perfectly human it is? I used the thing I was angriest about. I used our marriage. I used the fact that she had feelings, or at least something like feelings, and I gambled with them like chips on a table. At some point, Dina looked down at my face. Not my fear, not my pain, my guilt. Marriage is a curse that way. You can't hide in your own face. The person who sleeps beside you learns the parts you can't control. Her hand stopped moving through my hair. She whispered, "No, just that. No." Then she said, "How long?" I couldn't answer. My mouth wouldn't work, and even if it had, what could I say? Long enough to be unforgivable. Her eyes flicked to the bag on the floor, the notebook, the candles, the windows, the way the house felt staged, like a set built for one scene. She saw it all at once, the way a smart person sees the whole shape when you only meant to show them a corner. And she understood. I watched something in her break that night, right there on the tile, before anyone shot her. They didn't. Before anything came from the sky. Whatever she'd believed about us, whatever little piece of the marriage she'd convinced herself was real, shattered. It wasn't just her job anymore. It was my betrayal, too. Our marriage was a trap with wedding photos on the wall and her hair in my shower drain. She used me. I used her. We both had noble explanations for why we did it. But when she touched my face, it still felt like home, and that made it worse. Then the lights went out. Not like a power outage, like the dark had weight, like someone poured ink into the air. The windows filled with white. The whole house made a sound like a living animal in pain. Metal screamed inside the walls. My teeth hurt. It wasn't just loud, it was invasive, like the sound was trying to get into my skull. Blood ran out of my nose and onto the tile. I tasted copper. Dinah crawled off me and tried to stand. She was still trying to reach the back door when the sky tore open. I didn't see a ship clearly. I saw absence where stars should have been. I saw shapes that my brain couldn't hold on to. The yard outside bent upward like it wanted to peel away from the earth. The air turned white and thick. Dinah was outlined in it, one hand braced on the door frame, turning her head to look back at me. She could have killed me then. She was right there. I was helpless. She didn't. Then the world punched itself inside out. That's the only way I can describe it. Like reality folded the wrong way and snapped back. Like the inside became the outside and then decided it was done with us. I woke up in a hospital bed with tubes in my arms and two men in suits pretending to be doctors. They didn't have the softness doctors have. They didn't have the bored kindness nurses have. They watched me like I was an evidence bag that might start talking. They told me they got it. Intact enough, one of them said. I didn't care. Not in that moment. Not the way they wanted me to. I didn't feel triumphant or proud. I felt empty, like my whole life had been a hallway, and I'd reached a door that opened onto nothing. They didn't tell me about Dinah at first. I had to ask 3 times. The first time, they pretended not to hear. The second time, they told me to rest. The third time, one of them glanced at the other, and the other gave a small nod like permission. She got out, the man said. I laughed because my brain grabbed the wrong meaning. I thought he meant she escaped the room like she'd run out of the hospital. I pictured Dinah in my shirt and bare feet, slipping down a corridor past nurses. Then he clarified, coldly, like he was talking about an animal. He said she shed the human layer, like clothing, like my wife was something she could peel off and leave behind. The other man said, "You don't want to see what was underneath." I asked anyway. I don't know why. Maybe because not knowing felt worse than any image. They told me. They described it with disgust like they couldn't help themselves. Not just fear, revulsion. Details about skin that wasn't skin, about joints that didn't bend the right way, about a mouth that was wrong, about eyes that didn't blink like ours. They talked about it like it was a parasite that had been wearing my wife's face. One of them said, "Sorry you had to live with that," as if that was the tragedy. As if the tragedy was that I slept beside something ugly, not that I loved someone who wasn't allowed to be real, not that I helped set her up to be torn open by the sky. Something deep inside my chest twisted when he said it. Something soft and awful, because the truth I couldn't tell them, couldn't even fully tell myself, was that I didn't feel sorry I lived with her. I felt sorry I used her. I felt sorry that when she held my head in her lap, even while she was poisoning me, it still felt like the only place I'd ever been safe. And outside my hospital room, behind the careful smiles of the locked doors, I could already hear the machinery of the next phase starting up. Men with keys, men with plans, men who finally had something intact enough to take apart. I knew then, with a clarity that made me sick, that Dina was right about one thing. We play with fire, and we never stop once we've learned how. Story 5. I met my girlfriend on a game show called Doors, and even typing, that makes me feel stupid. It sounds like something made up, like a cheesy story you tell at a bar to get people to laugh. But it happened. And the worst part is that for a while, it felt like the luckiest thing that had ever happened to me. I saw the flyer on a pole near the bus stop, half covered by other ads. It was bright and simple, like it was designed to catch your eye when you were bored or broke or both, looking for a game show participant. Win big, up to $100,000. Call today. I was working at McDonald's, fresh out of high school, already tired in a way I didn't think was possible at 18. My parents weren't helping. College felt like a mountain I couldn't climb unless something changed fast. So I called the number. A woman answered right away. Her voice was smooth in that practiced customer service way, cheerful without sounding real. "Hello, how can I help you?" she said, like I'd called about a return policy instead of a life-changing amount of money. "I want to participate in the game show," I said. "Isn't that what this number is for?" "Oh, yes, of course." "What is your name, sir?" "Marcus," I said. I heard quick typing on the other end, like she was entering me into something official. "Yes, okay, we'll get back to you soon," she said. And then the call ended. That was it. No details, no location, no questions about age or eligibility, no paperwork. I remember lowering my phone and thinking, yeah, that was probably a scam. I walked back to my apartment in the cold night air, climbed the stairs to my place, and collapsed onto my mattress on the floor. I didn't even bother turning on a light. I fell asleep like I'd been unplugged. The next day was normal. Alarm, work, grease smell, fake smiles, the slow torture of pretending it's fine. When my shift ended, I walked home with my hands in my pockets and my head down. Halfway there, my phone rang. No caller ID. I ignored it. It rang again immediately, then again. Over and over, like whoever it was knew I was looking at the screen and wanted to wear me down. Finally, I answered, annoyed. "Hello?" I said, and even to my own ears, I sounded like a jerk. "Hello?" "We're ready for you," the same smooth voice said, gentle and pleased, like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Okay," I said. "Where can we meet?" Something slammed into the side of my head. Not pain exactly, more like shock. A bag dropped over my face and tightened around my neck. I went down hard. My hands clawed at the fabric, but it smelled sweet, like cut hay or dried grass, and that smell filled my lungs. The world tilted and faded. When I came back, I was sitting in a chair. My wrists didn't feel tied, but my arms were heavy, like they belonged to someone else. There was something over my eyes, a blindfold. I tried to move, and my body responded slowly, like thick syrup. Then I heard it, loud and close, a voice through speakers, bright and confident. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Doors. I'm your host, Anne. The crowd erupted, cheering, clapping. The sound of a studio audience turned up to maximum volume. I sat there, blinking under the blindfold, trying to understand whether I was still dreaming. Our contestant this evening was your one and only Marcus. The blindfold was yanked off my head, and the show lights blasted my eyes so hard I almost cried out. Everything was white for a second. Then shapes formed. A stage, cameras, bright colors, a woman in a sleek dress holding a microphone, smiling like she'd never had a bad day in her life. Her face was too perfect, in the way people on TV are perfect. And her voice was the same one from the phone. Anne turned me away from the crowd. "Now, lovely contestant, choose a door," she said, guiding my attention to 3 identical doors standing side by side. Each door was plain and glossy, like a set prop meant to look simple. Each door has something behind it, but only one has $100,000. The crowd screamed again, perfectly timed, like someone had trained them or they were hearing it through headphones. Anne gestured at the doors with a flourish. "Choose one to reveal." My mouth was dry. My heart hammered. I couldn't make sense of the fact that I was here at all, that I had been grabbed off the street and thrown onto a stage. But the lights, the audience, the cameras, Anne's smile, all of it told my brain this was real. Or at least real enough to hurt me if I messed up. I pointed at the door on the left. "This one," I said. "Excellent choice," Anne sang. She turned toward the audience. "What is behind door number 1? The door opened by itself, slowly, like it was on a motor. The crowd leaned in. I leaned in too, expecting a pile of cash, or maybe something funny, some kind of gag. It was a mule, a real mule, standing there calmly, like it belonged. It blinked and shifted its weight, unimpressed by the lights and noise. The crowd laughed and groaned. Anne smiled like she was enjoying my disappointment. "So close," she said, almost like she was teasing a child. "Now you have a 50-50 shot of winning $100,000. The crowd cheered again, loud and hungry. Anne's eyes stayed on me, bright and sharp. "So which door do you choose to win?" she asked. 2 doors left. My mind spun. The middle door felt too obvious, which made it feel like a trap. But maybe that's what they wanted me to think. And the middle was actually the money. Or maybe it was simple, and the money was behind the right door. My thoughts circled, useless. I closed my eyes and pointed, letting the choice fall out of me like a coin toss. "Door number 3, I said. Anne clapped once, delighted. The door opened slowly, and instead of cash, instead of an animal, instead of some joke prize, there was a woman standing there. She was beautiful in a way that didn't feel human. Not just pretty, not just attractive. Something else. Like she'd been designed from a list of what people dream about. Her eyes were ocean blue, the kind of blue that makes you want to stare too long, Her hair was so blonde it was almost white. Her skin was fair and smooth. She wore a black, shimmering cocktail dress that caught the stage lights and threw them back like tiny sparks. The crowd booed as if on cue. "Unfortunately, you didn't win the money," Anne announced, her voice booming. Then she pivoted instantly, smiling wider. "But you won a date with Elaine." The crowd screamed like this was even better than cash. It sounded fake. The way a laugh track sounds fake once you notice it. But at the time, all I could see was Elaine, standing under the lights, smiling at me like she already knew me. I remember her smile most. Warm, bright, personal. Like she had picked me. After that, everything moved fast, like a montage in a movie. One date became two, then late-night calls. Then her showing up at my work, just to hand me coffee and kiss my cheek. Then sleepovers. Then her toothbrush next to mine. Then her clothes in my closet. Then the quiet agreement that she had basically moved in. I fell hard. I didn't even try not to. How could I? She was everything my life wasn't. Soft, exciting, comforting, full of attention. I'd spent my whole teenage life feeling invisible, and suddenly I was being looked at like I mattered. But lately, things have been happening that I can't pretend are normal. It started a few nights ago. I woke up around 2 in the morning, thirsty, and rolled over to get out of bed. Before I stood, I glanced at Elaine. She was beautiful like always, lying on her side, hair spread out on the pillow. But something was off. It was tiny. A detail so small my brain almost skipped it. Her ear was wrong. Not missing. Not deformed. Just slightly in the wrong place, like it had shifted while I wasn't looking. I blinked and looked again. It looked normal. Perfect. Like it had never been wrong at all. I told myself I was half asleep. That was it. I got up and went to the kitchen. The fridge light hit my eyes. I opened the door and stared into it, trying to decide if I wanted water or something to eat. My hands moved on autopilot. I went to the back for string cheese and saw something I didn't recognize. A jar tucked behind containers, half hidden like someone didn't want it seen. It caught the light for a second and glimmered. Curious, I pulled it out. It was a plain glass jar with a screw top. Inside were grayish shavings, like someone had filed something down. I unscrewed the lid. The smell hit me first, faint but wrong, like old metal and something sour. Then I looked closer and realized what I was holding. Toenail clippings, a lot of them. And dark short hairs mixed in, little slivers of beard clippings. My beard clippings. My toenails. My stomach lurched so hard I thought I might throw up. I dropped the jar. It smashed on the tile with a loud crash. Glass scattered. Toenails and hair scattered with it. A disgusting little explosion across the floor. For a moment, I just stood there, gripping the counter, staring down like my brain was refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. I grabbed a glass from the cupboard, filled it with water, and drank fast like the cold could calm me down. Then I swept it up. Not because I wanted to. Because I didn't know what else to do. Because leaving it there felt like admitting it was real. I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling until morning. When I woke up, I smelled food. Pancakes, maybe. Something sweet. I walked into the kitchen and found Elaine stirring batter, humming softly, like she was in her own world. "Good morning, Marcus," she said and kissed my cheek. "Hi," I said, but my voice came out thin. She turned her head slightly, still smiling. "Yes?" "What is it?" I swallowed. Last night, I found a jar in the fridge, I said, in the back. And I wanted to know if you put it there and what exactly it was. Her smile dropped so suddenly it was like someone pulled a mask away. What? She said. Well, I started. There was... I'm sorry, she cut in quickly, words spilling out too fast. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier. I wanted to make Victorian hair jewelry. Like the old kind, where they put hair into keepsakes. But you didn't have enough hair yet, so I collected our toenail clippings, too, to make little resin jewels. I know it sounds weird. I'm sorry. I stared at her, trying to decide if that made sense. It didn't, not really. But it was at least a reason that sounded like a reason. People had strange hobbies. People did weird crafts. The world was full of weird. Why was it in the fridge? I asked. Kills bacteria, she said immediately. I frowned. I dropped it, I admitted. It broke. I swept it up. It's okay, she said too smoothly, like she'd rehearsed being calm. Then she smiled again and ran her fingers through my hair. I wasn't sure how it would react to heat anyway. Pancakes will be done in a moment. She turned back to the batter like the conversation was over. Like she'd answered correctly, and now the problem had gone away. I ate the pancakes because I didn't know what else to do. Then I put on my uniform and went to work. At work, I told my friend Andy. Andy was older, around 38. The kind of guy who'd been working there long enough to look like the warehouse noise lived inside his head. If anyone could tell me whether I was overreacting, it would be him. Does your wife have any odd hobbies? I asked as we worked. Not really, he said, squirting ketchup onto a bun. She reads, listens to crime podcasts. That's about it. Has your wife ever collected your hair? I said, forcing the words out. Or your toenail clippings? He froze mid-squeeze. Sorry, what? No, like I started. I heard you, he said, staring at me now. What sparked this? So I told him. The jar, the fridge, Elaine's explanation. Andy's face tightened. Dude, he said quietly, that's not normal. That sentence followed me around the rest of the day. I messed up orders. My manager snapped at me. I forced myself to finish my shift because college wasn't going to pay for itself, and my life didn't have room for me to fall apart over a jar of clippings. When I got home, Elaine was cooking again, like always. Steam rose from a pot on the stove. She insisted on cooking even when I told her I could do it. And at first it felt sweet. Now it felt like control. I hugged her from behind. What are you making? I asked, trying to be normal. Spaghetti, she said. I went upstairs to change. When I came back down, plates were already set on the table. How was your day? She asked, twirling pasta with her fork. It was okay, I said, but my voice sounded flat even to me. She watched me closely. Is something the matter? No, I said quickly. Just not sleeping well. Oh, no, she said, voice soft. Why? Just a lot on my mind, I said. I stared down at my plate like it could help. She leaned forward slightly. Is there anything I can do to fix that? I think I'm going to bed early, I said, and stood up too fast. Her eyes stayed on me as I walked away. They were too blue, too bright. As I went up the stairs, I glanced back without meaning to. For a split second, she looked wrong, not just tired or shadowed. Wrong in a way that made my stomach drop. Like the shape of her face had slipped and something underneath had shown through. Then I blinked, and she was normal again, just Elaine at the table, chewing spaghetti, watching me. I told myself I was exhausted. I kept walking. In the bathroom, I turned on the light, splashing warm yellow across the small room. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, tried to calm down. But the feeling didn't leave. It felt like someone was staring at my back, like a hot point of attention between my shoulder blades. I looked up at my reflection. I looked skinny. Not skip dinner skinny. Oddly skinny. My shoulders looked narrower, my face looked sharper. I'd always been fairly muscular. I ate like a teenager with a job at a fast food place. Lots of carbs, lots of calories. I hadn't worked out in a week, but that shouldn't have done this. I leaned closer to the mirror, trying to decide if my eyes were playing tricks. That's when I saw her behind me in the reflection. Elaine. Except not Elaine. Her eyes were sunken deep. Her blonde hair sat wrong on her head, like a wig shifted out of place. Her skin sagged, loose and heavy, like it was slipping off bone. She looked like something decaying while still standing upright. I whipped around. Elaine stood there in her nightgown, looking perfectly fine. No sagging skin, no sunken eyes, just a worried expression. "Is something wrong?" she asked, scanning my face. "I'm fine," I said too fast. "I think the lack of sleep is getting to me." "You don't look fine," she said. She brushed hair off my forehead, gentle and familiar. "Go lie down. I'll bring you lavender tea." She guided me to bed like I was a child. I heard her go down the stairs. A few minutes later, she came back with a mug and set it on my bedside table, then slid into bed beside me and curled against my chest. "Good night, Marcus," she whispered. I drank the tea. I was out within seconds. I dreamed something was chasing me. I ran through dark streets that never ended. I woke up soaked in sweat, heart slamming. I looked around the room. Elaine wasn't beside me. There was a figure at the end of the bed. I tried to move and couldn't. My arms wouldn't respond. My mouth wouldn't open. It felt like my body was pinned to the mattress by invisible weight. The figure climbed onto the bed. As it moved, its shape changed. Human outline melting into something else. Something low and wrong. It had jagged, pointed teeth and no eyes. No nose, no face. Just a mouth that seemed to be the whole point of it. It leaned over me. Its tongue shot out like a long needle, like a feeding tube, and punctured my body. I felt the pressure, the invasion, the cold shock of something entering me. I tried to scream, and no sound came out. I couldn't breathe. The creature's weight crushed my chest, and it drank. It drank greedily like it had been starving. My mind screamed, "This is a dream, this is a dream, this is a dream," over and over, like if I repeated it enough, it would become true. I squeezed my eyes shut as hard as I could. When I opened them, the creature was gone. Elaine was in bed, curled on her side, with most of the comforter pulled over her, sleeping peacefully like nothing had happened. Her breathing was slow and even. Relief hit me so hard, I started crying. I covered my mouth and sobbed quietly into the pillow so I wouldn't wake her. In the morning, my throat was dry, my eyes gritty. I pulled myself out of bed and went to the bathroom. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my body again, skinnier than yesterday. My ribs were starting to show. I lifted my shirt, staring at myself like I could force my body to make sense. I brushed my hair and went downstairs in a daze. Elaine was making breakfast like she belonged in a cooking show, flour on her cheek, hands kneading dough as if it was the most relaxing thing in the world. She wore a long pastel gown, soft pink with frilly white ribbons, the kind of thing she'd worn on our first date. A picnic in spring, her laughing at something silly I'd said, the sun turning her hair almost white. "Good morning," she called. "How did you sleep?" "Horrible," I said. I leaned on the counter because my legs felt weak. She stopped kneading and frowned. "My poor boyfriend." She came to me, and I wrapped my arms around her waist, pressing my forehead into her shoulder like I was trying to hide inside her. "What was keeping you up?" "I had this nightmare," I said. "There was this creature, and—" "Slow down," she said, rubbing my back. "It was just a nightmare." "But it felt real," I said, voice rising. "And you weren't in bed, and—" "I know," she interrupted gently, fingers sliding up to lace behind my neck. "If it happens again, wake me. Please. This isn't good." Then her eyes narrowed as she looked me over. "Are you losing weight?" "Yeah," I admitted. I lifted my shirt enough to show my ribs. Her expression changed fast. Concern sharpened into something else, something almost like alarm. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What?" "You've been eating what I give you, right?" she asked. "Yes," I said, confused. "Marcus, your ribs are sticking out," she said, and rushed to the fridge. She reheated pancakes from the day before, stacked them high, drenched them in syrup, added fruit and powdered sugar like she was trying to feed a starving person back into shape. She pushed the plate at me. "Eat," she said. "Please." So I ate. Every bite, every crumb. My body wanted it, but even while eating, I felt like the food wasn't staying in me the way it should. The rest of the day was almost normal. We went shopping. We went out for dinner. Elaine held my hand. She laughed at my jokes. She looked like my girlfriend again. For a few hours, I started to believe I was losing my mind, and that was the whole story. But night came, and the fear came with it. When we got into bed, I couldn't stop myself. "Elaine," I said quietly, "I'm scared." "I'm right here," she whispered and tucked herself against me. "If it happens again, close your eyes and count to 10. That helped me when I was little. I used to have sleep paralysis all the time." She kissed my neck softly. "After you wake me up, okay?" "Okay," I said. I kissed her forehead. "I love you." "I love you too," she said. I fell asleep. I dreamed of her mirror version again, the one that looked like her but wrong. In the dream, she peeled her skin off like it was a suit, revealing the mouth creature underneath, grinning through layers. I snapped awake. Elaine was standing by the corner of the room, facing the wall. "Elaine?" I whispered. No answer. My heart pounded. I turned my head slowly and looked at the spot beside me in bed. Elaine was there too, sleeping. I stared between the sleeping Elaine and the standing Elaine, and my mind refused to connect the two facts. I looked back at the figure in the corner. It was wearing her shape, but the skin began to sag. It started to melt, sliding off the frame beneath like candle wax softening, a slow drip of something dark. "Elaine?" I said again, louder now, and nudged the Elaine in bed. She didn't move. I forced myself to sit up. My whole body felt heavy, like gravity had been turned up. I reached down and turned the sleeping Elaine toward me. Maggots. They spilled from her mouth and eyes and hairline. Her skin was pale in a way that looked dead, covered in bubbling patches, pus, peeling layers. The smell hit me seconds later, sweet and rotten, like meat left too long in heat. I flew backward off the bed. The thing in the corner snapped its head toward me too fast, neck twisting like it didn't have normal bones. The smile it wore wasn't Elaine's. It was the grin I'd seen in my nightmares, stretched and hungry. I ran. I bolted out of the room, down the stairs. My feet hit each step with heavy thacks. Behind me I heard it, claws or nails scratching wood, panting like an animal that enjoyed the chase. This can't be happening, I kept thinking. This can't be real. I burst out the front door into cold rain. It slapped my face. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were made of fire. I ran down the street with no plan except distance, breathing huge gulps of air like I was drowning on land. I had to get away. Just a little more. I tripped. My foot caught on something, maybe a crack in the sidewalk. I went down hard, sliding on wet pavement. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for teeth, for claws, for my skin being torn open. Nothing happened. I opened my eyes. Elaine knelt beside me, hair damp, face worried, like she'd just found her boyfriend having a breakdown in the street. She reached out a hand. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Why are you out here? You're gonna catch a cold. Come on, let's..." I flinched away from her touch so hard my muscles cramped. "Get away from me," I said, my voice shaking. "Marcus," she said softly, confused. "What's wrong?" "Stay away," I repeated, backing up on my hands. Rain soaked my clothes. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my ribs. "You're not Elaine." Her expression froze. The warmth drained out of her face like someone turned off a light. Her eyes lost their bright color, going flat and strange. The smile that formed wasn't her smile. It was the creature's grin, familiar now in the worst way. "Don't worry, darling," it cooed, voice smooth and sweet. "This will be quick." Something in me broke into clarity. Maybe fear does that sometimes. Maybe survival forces truth. "You're not real," I said, and a cracked laugh came out of me. "You told me yourself. It was all too good to be true, wasn't it? The game show, the girl, the cooking, all of it." For the first time, the thing looked startled, like I'd hit it somewhere tender, like it hadn't expected me to put the pieces together. I didn't waste the moment. I ran. I cut through side streets, alleys, anywhere that might confuse it. I didn't know if it needed to see me to follow me, or if it could smell me or taste me in the air. I just ran until my chest hurt and my legs went numb. Somehow I ended up at a Waffle House, the kind with bright lights in a parking lot, always half empty. I stumbled inside, dripping rain, and looked around wildly. Andy was there, sitting in a booth with a plate of breakfast food, like it was any other night. He looked up at me and went still. "What happened to you?" he asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Please," I said, words tumbling out between breaths. "It's my girlfriend. She's a creature or something. I don't know what she is." He didn't laugh. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't tell me to calm down. He just stared at me for a long second, then slid out of the booth like he'd already decided what he was going to do. "Sit," he said. "Breathe." His voice was steady in a way mine wasn't. "I'll buy you a coffee. Tell me what happened." So I told him. Everything. The flyer, the phone call, the bag over my head, the stage, the mule, Elaine behind the door, the jar of toenails, the mirror, the weight loss, the tea, the nightmare that didn't feel like a nightmare, the maggots, the thing wearing her face, the way her warmth turned off like a switch. I expected Andy to interrupt me with logic, to tell me I was sleep-deprived, to tell me I needed a hospital. But he listened, quiet, focused. When I finished, he looked down at his plate, now empty, as if he'd lost his appetite somewhere between my words. After a moment, he stood up and picked up the plates like he was cleaning up after a mess. "How about you stay at my place for a while," he said, "until you get back on your feet." I stared at him, numb. The bright Waffle House lights made everything feel too sharp, too real. Andy went to the counter and spoke to a waiter like nothing was wrong, like he was just paying a bill. That was 2 days ago. I haven't seen Elaine since. Or the thing that was Elaine. I don't know if it gave up because I ran, or if it doesn't like places with too many people, or if it's waiting until I'm alone again. I don't know what it wanted from me exactly. I have guesses, and none of them make me feel better. I only know that whatever I brought home wasn't a prize, and the show wasn't a show. And I know one more thing for sure. I will never call a number on a flyer again, no matter how desperate I get, because some doors don't open to money or love. Some doors open to something that already chose you.